And so, incidentally, when you wear a mask, you're supposed to be safe. But in the process of wearing a mask, you're also having a problem you can't breathe properly. And so, this mask, I'm having a hard time breathing, a hard time seeing. And so, hypoxia is where pretty much you start building up some carbon in your lungs, and you just really can't breathe, and eventually becomes dangerous. So now, the situation that we have before us is that we are placed this thing called affirmative action. Now, pretty much how it all works is that you have this situation where people are told that there's a certain kind of class of people that's supposed to benefit from their work, and the work they're supposed to benefit from is because they're a certain kind of ethnic group or they're a certain kind of person. And so, incidentally, what it means is that you are only allowed to make or do or build based upon your ability to, what you look like, and your race, your ethnic group, your sexual orientation, all these different things. And so what happens is that when you are faced with, let's see, when you're faced with these things here, your situation is that you're able to have a position or a job, or in this case, where the ruling was is about getting into college. So your ability to get in college into Harvard, for example, is affected because of the fact that there's a limited number of representation of your person types of group because based on the color of their skin or based upon their gender or their social class or whatever. And so because of that, what they decided to do is to put something together so that we can actually, people who are not of the same mindset or same color, I guess, or gender, will be able to enroll and be part of a society that they're not represented in. So what ends up happening is this: there's a two-tier problem to that, because for one, though it may look good on the surface, you might be able to try and help a person get in a situation. The other part of the problem is that the person who gets in a situation does not know if they earned it because of the way they did it or because of their ability or actually earned your position. So not earning or knowing your position means that you are faced with a situation where there is a problem, because what ends up happening is that you're in a situation where you are seeing and you are part of something that you're not sure if you really belong there, and you'll never know if you really belong there. So what ends up happening is that if you are trying to earn something, you might always wonder, did I earn it? Did I really earn my position? So anyway, so what ends up happening is that you are faced with a question as to my worth and my value. Because oftentimes what happens when a person gets put in a position that they're not ready for, they fail at that position in doing what's right, or they fail in ability to perform properly. Now, many of the people that get into a situation where they're actually working and they're doing something that they earned, they know all the ins and outs. For example, if you were to build a car, you would know all the details about how to build that car. You would know all the details about what's necessary for you to be able to complete and to make the thing that's there. So if, for example, you cut corners, you cheated to get there. Let's say, for example, you cheated to get there. And when you cheat to get there, what ends up happening is that you get put in a situation where you don't know. For example, if your father happens to be a very powerful person, he puts you in a position of a job that you're not qualified for, two things are going to happen. One, eventually people are going to see that you're not qualified for the job at hand, and secondly, they're going to see that you are not. Eventually, things are going to go wrong, and they're not going to be able to go to you for help. They're going to go to the real person who knows really what's there. So the case for affirmative action, what the situation was there was that we're trying to have people know that by doing work, they themselves will be able to know that that they all that they are they've earned their position, they've earned their status, they've earned where they belong. And so if you can't earn where you belong, then you're not really sure if you really have it. It's like whenever I make a character, for example, if I make a character out of masking tape, right? For example, I make a structure. Let's say, for example, I make a creature. I make this, right? And so if I make this, I know all the ins and outs. I made this. This is something that from years of experience, being able to make this. I can make a creature. I can make a goat. I can make another goat if I need to. The reason why I do this is because I have the ability to make it. You can see that by definition. I know exactly where everything is. I know what's needed to be made. And so the thing is this: when you have a situation where you're put into a job that you don't belong or a job that you're not qualified for, what ends up happening is that you are not qualified for the position. So even though somebody pushes you into the position and you're not qualified for it, eventually what happens, the person actually drops out of it. So on one side, you would never have the opportunity for that position in the first place if you didn't have, if you weren't in there. The second part is that if you don't have the position, then you would never be able to be there, right? But the thing is, but if you're not qualified for a position, then you won't have it for long either. So what ends up happening with the whole affirmative action thing is that you put people in the position where they don't belong because they're not qualified. And what ended up happening, the people they drop out because they say, I can't maintain that. And they say, well, see, I gave them position and they weren't ready for it. It's kind of a double-edged sword when you really think about it when it comes down to it. See, in my own life, I had many things that happened to me where I began working in different fields. And, I am not from America. My home country is an island called Dominica in the West Indies. It's between the island of Martinique and Guadeloupe in the Caribbean Sea. And what happens, it was once upon a time, it was a French colony, it was a British colony. It gained its independence from the British back in 1978. And so Dominica is a country that the people who come from there are free people. We're not enslaved. We're not part of the slavery system. We were part of a slavery system, yes, at one point, but what ended up happening was, we got our independence and our freedom from the fact of the matter that we got independence from the British, just like America got freedom from independence of the British. So when I came to the United States, we were freed people. We weren't people coming looking for asylum. We weren't people looking for a handout or a situation. But what ended up happening is that we got our freedom. And our freedom, we got that from, we had a freedom before we came to the United States. So everything we did, my parents never told me that I was black. I never learned that I was a black going to school, from my parents. I learned that we are people, we are freed people, and we come here to make things better for ourselves. Even though Dominica was pretty good, and it was under the British rule, and many British colonies, they just have a system of transformation. But for the most part, though, when we came to the United States, it was for a different path. I'm gonna take this mask off because I can't wear this anymore because I'm running out of air. So I'm gonna dip out of here for a second. Take off this mask. Scenario, you're faced with the fact that most people don't understand that there's that they come from different parts of the equation. So, for example, your situation there, 13th Amendment is freedom for slaves to be second thing. You got the 14th Amendment where it says 14th Amendment where citizenship, and then the 15th is the right to vote. So you have the 15th right to vote. So what happens is that when you have these situations that happen and you're faced with these things, what ends up happening is that you are faced with the mindset that you've been given something, when in fact, you've been given freedom. And I talk a lot about how when you look at both sides of it, if someone can give you something, they can take it away from you. And so if I give you this goat, right? I give you this goat, and somebody comes along, and they say they want it. It says, well, this isn't given to me. But if somebody gives it to me, they say, well, I gave it to you, but now I give it to them. Kind of a thing like that. And this was kind of happening because when you had this situation, they say the majority of the people who benefit from the affirmative action was, they say, suburban white women. That's what I was told. The other part was based upon the fact that it was not necessarily the black people who got it, because sometimes people who got in a position were not ready for that position. And so they put there because they had a quota to fill. And that's the sad part about the whole fact, is that you're not sure exactly if your work that you're doing is actually going to be the work that's qualified, because you're working on something, and you work on something and you're not sure if you qualified. So that gives a bittersweet situation, because you're never really sure if you got there because you earned it, or you got there because you fit a quota. And so what ends up happening is, if you fit in a quota, then you really feel all kind of weird feelings about it, like like a certain vice president that we have. We're not sure that person was told they got their position not because of their skill or ability. As a matter of fact, their whole party didn't want them, but this gentleman went ahead and picked them to be the vice president, and because of and because of their gender. So I don't know. It's like one of those things where, how does the person feel to that? Do you feel like you earned it? And then when you get into position, do you know that the position is going to be able to survive you, because you have this scenario where you're trying your best to do something and you're not ready for that position. So what I wanted to say was that there's a double-edged sword, because now that it's removed, what does that mean for people in general? Because at first, you have it where if you have the position available and you have the qualified people for that position, then there's no problem filling up that spot. For example, you're going to work at a McDonald's or something. If you're going to work at a McDonald's, they need somebody to be a cook. They don't care what you are. They'll hire you. But if you're in a position of leadership, and there's people that are really qualified for that leadership position, and that person has earned their rank to get to that position, and now they're next in line, and they get looked over, I mean, that no is the same no as a person not getting it, whether they're this or that. But if that person earned it, and they got to a level, and they earned that position, and they know they got it, as opposed to somebody just put you there, not because you earned it. It's like when you get to that position, when you become the sea captain of that vessel, you know how to operate it. If you're put in that position because you happen to be a certain, quota you had to fill, then at that point you have a situation where you're not able to do the job. I mean, you might be able to learn a job. Some people do this thing called fake it till they make it. And I've met a lot of people in my life now that they tell me that they didn't know what they were doing, and they got the job, and they just stayed up all night learning as much as they could. And what they ended up doing was that when they learned the job, they were able to actually keep faking it until they make it because nobody else was at that level. I mean, now you can't really do that because everybody can check everybody's background. You can check the details where people went to school, all that stuff. You can find out where I went to school, all these different things. You know where everything I did. You have my Instagram and my Facebook. You can see all my life. But for the most part, though, you have people who are, they get put in a position not because they're qualified, but because they have a thing to fill. And so you have to understand at that point that person becomes a puppet to the system. The person also becomes dependent upon the system because if something was to happen to them, now they can't go back or lose their position because they didn't earn it in the first place. So you have on one side, if I'd never had the opportunity to do this, then I wouldn't be able to do it. The other side is that if I didn't earn the opportunity to do this, now when I get there, I'm going to be a problem. It's like the other day I just had to learn how to change the oil in my car, and that took a while for me to do that because for the most part though, when I didn't know how to do it first, I watched some videos, I looked it over, I got in there. I'm gonna make a video, you're gonna see that soon. What happens is that when you see the scenario there of how it works, is that I had to learn how to do it. And somebody else who knew how to do it better had to give me a hand because I really couldn't get this one thing solved. And so when it happened, the person helped me out, and I was able to take it from the rest from there. So now going forward, I know how to do this completely from start to finish. But now, so at the point, if I was to be able to push in a position because I was because of this, right? And I put in the position to do this, and I didn't know how to do it, and then I would just mess up the car. I'd mess up the situation because I wouldn't know how to do it. I would have to watch more movies, but I never had the experience yet to actually do it. So now this whole thing, there's an acceptable level of corruption is what I have as title for the video, and the Fall of Affirmative action. There's a corruption on both sides. One, because in this country, there's a thing about slavery, and what slavery did was that it actually messed up a lot of people because what it did was that it took people that wasn't supposed to be here and to America. And then what happens when they got here, they were given freedom, and now when you're given freedom and a person doesn't know what to do, people are left to fend for themselves. So when you're left to fend for yourself, you're kind of a situation where now you have to go and make some sense of things. So you start putting together, start organizing, and then another thing will happen. It come in to sabotage your efforts to make yourself better. Eventually continue to sabotage because there's a guilt, there's a feeling. I'm not going to say there's a altogether, but those people during the time, they knew that what they were doing was wrong. And instead of helping the black people who were fundamental blacks of America or fundamental black Africans who were here, and they were doing the work in the slavery and all that, what happened was that when they were faced with the situation, they didn't know what to do, how to free the people and give them the rights to be free. And so even with the war of the North and the South and all these different things, it wasn't about slavery. It was about trying to save the Union. But in 1854 was when the Republican Party was formed, and it was formed to end polygamy, the Mormon polygamy, and also to fight against slavery, and pretty much it was there was a distinction. But for the most part, though, we got our emancipation. Americans got their emancipation in 1863, Emancipation Proclamation. But then in 1865 is when the 1865 is when the 13th Amendment was written. And it didn't happen. It didn't actually open up or go through until it was like laws had to be put in power to protect, because now these people who were but what ended up happening was that over the course of time, it just continued to go back and forth. And we'll give you freedom, but we're going to take it away. We're going to give you some Jim Crow laws, and they're going to have to fight with that. And you can be here, but you can't go there. Or you're a citizen, yeah, but you're not a citizen, real citizen. And then so you have these different things. So you're faced with a scenario where they give you something, but they could take it away from you. By taking it away from you, what it does is that it makes you want it. It makes you want to stay there. It makes you want to comply just so you can go along with the situation. And so when you look at the corruption that's involved in that, it's a corruption where they weren't supposed to do this in the first place. You weren't take people over. So now what do? You give people their own freedom. He says, you know what? I think the society is afraid of that because they know what would happen. They fear that it would turn on the system. So instead, what has happened? They've encouraged drugs and the single parent homes, and they've encouraged those kind of things. And then the single independentista, the black independent woman and all that, and then having the many kids, and then they give us the welfare, they give us all these different things, these aids are supposed to help us. But what ends up happening, it hurts us because, again, if you take the power out, if you don't know how to make your own power, don't make your own fire on the government shuts our abilities and earn your abilities to make your own money. So what Dr. Claude Anderson and Dr. Boyce Watkins have always said, it's good for you to do three things. One, you teach your own children. If you're a black person, if you're a person of any ethnic group, you teach your own children. The whole school system is Caesar, okay? It's Caesar, and trains to be Caesar and becomes like citizens of Rome. One. Number two, you have to have your own business. You need to have your own business, because if you don't have your own business, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? The third thing you have is that you have to put money back into your community and build it. There are many communities in my community, and what they do, they funnel money back into themselves. They don't go buying all the stuff in the Targets or in the Walmarts and all that, and they give it to other people. No, they take the money, they sub their stores, and they buy with their own people. They buy with their own friends, they buy their family, they buy with their own stuff, and they kind of trade back and forth, And that works out really good, because when it comes to, their taxes and their bills, they're able to work together and they knock those things out. Eventually, they build an entire community, and the community is so large, and it's based on one ethnic group or different ethnic groups that are willing to work together. So what ends up happening is that you go from having one person to having a whole community of people that are able to work together. So I just want to say that, pretty much, I don't want to talk forever on this, but I just wanted to say a couple of thoughts that, when they destroyed the affirmative action, when the Supreme Court ruled it as pretty much what it really is racism, because if you favor one person for a value of their skin color or their ability or their sexual orientation or their gender or pretty much wherever the class in society, and that means you're putting somebody else out of the situation. There was a swimmer, about that situation where that person won the swimming situation, but by that person winning, they put another person out. You know the story. I don't have to tell you, but you know. And what happened is that person won, and by that person winning, it knocked out a person who was supposed to win. Because that person was actually, they trained like that. This other person got it because they used the politics to knock it out. So this is kind of a double-edged sword. On one side, it knocks it all down, goes back to being merit again. You're gonna get it by merit. You have a guy like Amazing Lucas. He's saying that this is the end of black culture in and of itself. He's saying that this might be the end, because what happens is that the only reason we have anything is because it was given to us. And so when you have something that's given to you, it can be taken away unless you earn it. When you earn a skill, you can't unlearn it unless it gets hit you in the head or something. But you can't unlearn the skill. So once you have the situation and you learn it and you got something, what you can do is that you can actually go ahead and make a difference in this world. Whereas you have a skill that cannot be taken from you. That's why we as people, every one of us needs to embrace our skills and what we are able to do, not to just do the stupid job that's I know there's work that has to be done, but we have to embrace our skills and we have to trade our skills. That's a skill trade is different than having just fill a spot of some position, right? You can be there's a gentleman, Dr. Myron Golden. He says about how there's there's implementation where you work with your hands. There's management where you manage other people. There's the other part where it talks about how there's communication where you use your mouth to make money, and then there's a thing called creativity, where you use your creativity to make money, and with that you make the most money, because again, that's something that's divine, and that's something that God has given to you, and it's of the level where you can change the world, not because of based upon your just the way you look on the outside, but because of the fact that you have much skill on the inside. You're so valuable, they're afraid to lose you, as opposed to you're not afraid. Right, so that's what it comes down to. I just want to say thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to have classes in the classes in the park coming up soon. Look at my my link tree information. You can find where we're going to have that. I'm going to go to the event soon. But for the most part, though, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and God bless you. I wish you all the best. And again, don't let this situation is a double-edged sword, right? I think removing it is actually the best step. They should have not kept it. I think they should just remove it and be done with it. The other side of it is that if you didn't earn it in the first place. And that's what it comes down to. Either you earned it or you didn't earn it. Otherwise, you're part of the corruption too. All right. So I just want to say that. Thank you so much. God bless you. Have a good day. And thank you for all for watching. So peace. God bless. Like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Like Amazing Lucas.